Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mijo Podcast. So you guys, I did something exciting, something fun. I decided that I was gonna do no swiping, no dating apps. Yes, I went on a speed dating experience slash event. And I'm going to tell you guys all about it because I feel like you guys are genuinely like my friends. So I feel like you guys also have to hear about it. I wanted to test to see what was the whole jazz with like speed dating and like these in-person events. Wanted to see if it was real. Wanted to see if like real connections face to face were still a thing. And I want to break it all down for you guys. I want to talk about everything, the funny, the awkward, the weird, the crazy, like all of it. We're going to break it down right now. And I have my phone with me here on the side, so you might see me glaze down occasionally. I should be getting my results within like the next hour or so. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that I get those while we're on this episode so that I can tell you guys who I matched with because I'm going to be breaking down some interesting characters today. And yeah, so spoiler, this is going to be like fully uncensored. I'm going to tell you everything. I'm going to, try to conceal some people's identities because, I didn't ask them to sign any waivers or anything. But yeah, let's talk about it. So first of all, I feel like the biggest question is why did you go like to a speed dating event? And the real reason why I went on a speed dating event is because dating apps are hot trash, hot mess. And we talked about this a little bit on our previous episode about dating. If you haven't watched that, please go watch that. That's a really good episode and I love it. It was our Halloween episode. But as we talked about in that episode, dating apps are a hot mess. You are genuinely like, there's a bunch of like ghosting and like people just wanting to hook up. And like, it's a hot mess. Like everyone's like long-term relationship in the bio, but once you start texting them, like they really just want to be with the streets, one with the wind and the streets. So I said, okay, like, let's see if maybe, speed dating can lead to genuine like interactions. I mean, of course, like the whole point of it is like you're signing yourself up for this. So you are hopefully you're like seeking, something, which is a little bit more luck than if you just like randomly like go up to someone like, at a cafe or at a bar or something. Just because everyone's there for that sole purpose. So I decided, let's give it a shot. Let's try it. I wanted to try and see if I could like do something organic. And me and my therapist have been talking about this a lot. She's been really pushing me, as you guys have heard in other episodes, to go out, put myself in public spaces and like join groups and activities and like just, not only to have more of like a human connection because it's one of the things that I have learned that I value in life, but also to like just put myself out there and just let things happen organically. And like one of the biggest things that my therapist has told me is like what you're looking for, you're not going to find on a dating app. So you really have to just like, live life and not really go hunting for it in real life. But if you're not putting yourself in these spaces, then like, of course, no one's going to come knock on your door and be like, hey, like, let me take you out. So I saw this and I was like, let's do it. Funny enough, I also thought like, I'm going to be a little honest with you guys. Maybe like 45% of me was like, this is going to be an awesome episode for the podcast. So I did part of this for you guys. And I think a funny story that I want to tell is when I told my therapist that I was doing the event, I was like, hey, like, I want to tell you something that I think you're going to be really excited about. I told her, I was like, I signed up to go on a speed dating event. Tell me why. The first thing this woman said was, oh my God, Axel, this is going to be great content for your podcast. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, excuse me? I was like, oh, so like, fuck me trying to find like a soulmate and the partner, like, fuck me trying to find a boyfriend, like content. I was like, what have I raised? Like, don't get me wrong. I love my therapist. She's like amazing. And like, we're such a good team. And like, I owe so much to her. And like, I love her so much, like love her to death. But I literally wanted to laugh so hard because she literally like her first reaction was like, this is going to be great content for the podcast. And I was like, oh, like maybe coming from a friend, I can see that. But like from my therapist, I just thought it was the funniest thing ever. And if you're watching this, like, No hard feelings. I just thought it was so funny that literally the first thing she said was like great content for the podcast. I was like, oh, no kudos for like, doing what you wanted me to do. I was like, okay, whatever. Anyways, moving on from that. So the event, getting into the event and, breaking the whole event down, it was called a professional men's gay speed dating. Boom. So it was $40 to get in. I honestly thought about the price because I like to be frugal with certain things. Like, don't get me wrong, I like to splurge here and there, but sometimes I'm like, not worth it. But I came across this on TikTok. So I was scrolling on TikTok one day and it was this, girl, and she was like, oh, like, are you in the LA area, and like, are you single and gay and like looking to like match, whatever, right? So I saw the video and I was like, ooh. And honestly, I was on one that day. Like, I was like genuinely like in such a good mood that I was like, oh my God. I didn't even think about it. I immediately like clicked the link. It took me to Eventbrite and I bought the ticket. Didn't even think about it. I was like, you know what? F it. So I did that. So the event was put on by Odo Social. I hope I'm saying that right. And Sika is the name of the coordinator. She's amazing, phenomenal, like such great energy and great vibes. She's kind of like the creative like head behind Odo Social, and they're the ones that put it on. Like I said, her and her team are amazing. Found it on TikTok. Kudos to them. And the main part of this event was really it being like a vetted like social. So like they really went heavy on like the professional, like, men's dating, whatever, because when you signed up, they asked for your Instagram link and your LinkedIn link. And they said that, there was no address on the Eventbrite. And the instructions basically said like, okay, once you pay for your ticket, like, and your links come in, we're going to stalk and we're only going to let people in that like meet our criteria. What this criteria is, I genuinely don't know what the criteria is. I'm glad I made it. But yeah, so they said like, we're going to make sure that it's like genuine professionals and that like you're kind of like in this space with people that are near in the same like, level as you may call it. So I thought that was pretty cool because I was like, okay, like, there's a little more intention and that like, you don't really have to like worry about coming across someone that may not be like what you're looking for career sense. So I guess they did their stalking, they built their list and they let people in, and I was one of them. And yeah, it was held at a restaurant called Mr. T's in Mijo, so West Hollywood, for those of you that don't know. It was very cute. It was in the outdoor patio. It was at 7:00, so it was like, sun was down. Very much like cozy vibes. There was like candles that were like lit on the tables. There was like these little like ambiance lighting. So it was like very much a vibe. It was like completely a vibe. When we pulled up, you would check in with like, part of the team, and then they would give you a name tag. There was either like a blue or a green name tag, and you would put your name on it, and then you'd kind of just mingle at first. So everyone's just like mingling. Yeah, so pretty much you're just like mingling in the outdoor patio. And then after that, we started the event, and they kind of like introduced like, the team and everything, and kind of like they pretty much just said like, okay, on the other side, because it was like the patio that we were sitting in. It was like couches, lounging. And then there was like, like a little, kind of like a little bush that kind of separated like these tables. And that's like, I guess, where everything was happening. So cute. And then pretty much they said, if you have a blue name tag, like you're going to go sit at a table. And if you have a green name tag, just go sit at a random table. Green name tags will be the people moving around for this round. So I was like, okay, whatever. So they gave us 4 minutes to, have these little speed dates. So it's 4 minutes per conversation, and then they would switch. So there was like a little bell that would ring, and that was like your cue to like get up and go to the next table. I really thought like, okay, going into this, like once they explained it, I was like, this is either going to be like really, really, really good or like a hot mess. But I genuinely trusted the process. There was like drinks. Your ticket came with like one free like alcoholic beverage at the beginning. So like people were like drinking and socializing at first, which I thought was like really cool. I got there towards the end of like check-in because I do not live near or in West Hollywood. And I actually live closer to like Orange County, and I had to drive and get there by 7:30 because 7:30 was like the start time. doors open at 7, 7:30 was like start time. I want to say I got there like at 7:35 and they were like, okay, we're going to give it 5 more minutes. So I literally just had made it. And I was like hauling ass to get over there. And I genuinely like, after I got ready, before I left my apartment, I looked at the time to like get there and I was like, fuck. I was like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. But then I was like, you know what? Like, a trust fund baby could be on the other side. Like, what's the worst that can happen? So pretty much that's how it was. So I had a green name tag, so I had to move around. So I remember I was mingling with a few people at first. There was this one guy, me and him got there like at the same time. He was like really handsome. And we ended up like standing next to each other because everyone was like already there, like sitting on the couches and stuff. And we were just kind of like quick chat, like, oh, where do you come from? Like, what do you do? La 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 la. So that was like such a vibe, especially because he was like really handsome, totally my type. So I was like, okay, I kind of like this. And then once we started, I went to go sit with like this random table. And it was like this really nice gentleman. So it was like guy number one, really nice guy. He was very like shy, very timid. He was cute, but like, he was just like very shy, which is fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But he was like a teacher. I can't remember if he told me he was like an English or a history teacher, but he was like a teacher, I think at a middle school or high school or something like that. And he was just like, talking about like work. I feel like that was probably like the biggest question. Like, what do you do for a living? And then after that, we talked about coffee. I think we were kind of just like warming up because it was like the first connection. So we really didn't like exchange much. And I honestly felt like those 4 minutes like dragged because I was like, okay. I was like, have you tried the pumpkin chai at Starbucks? And he was like, no. And I was like, you should try it. It's really good. He was like, I'm going to get it tomorrow, like on my way to work. And I was like, fantastic. Bell? No, not yet. But he was really sweet. He was really sweet. I think I marked yes for him on my tally sheet, but I made a comment like friends because I didn't get like a romantic connection or like an intimate like romantic like connection from him. I really just got more of like, oh, he's a nice guy. Like, I mean, 4 minutes is too short to like genuinely like fully vet someone, but I was like, I'd be interested to like maybe go out to coffee and see like if he's like a cool friend, just because like his energy was like there, it was vibing. I'm trying to think after that. There was like probably like 25 to 30 people. Maybe I'm exaggerating, 20 to 25, like something like 25, I would say would be my guess. Yeah, like 25, because there was probably like 12 tables, I want to say, or 10, something like that. Don't quote me on that. But there was like a handful of people there, and I genuinely don't remember everyone. There was some people where I was just sitting there like respectfully. I was just like, is the 4 minutes up? Like, I can't. But one of the guys, and I made a note on my cue cards right here. One of the guys was... Okay, I'm just going to walk you through this. I sit down, and the guy was like... Literally, I just sit down, and he's like, what are our kids' names going to be? And I was like, oh, shit. I was like, okay, Buki. And then after that, he was like, oh, my name is like whatever. I don't even remember his name. He's like, oh, my name's like la la la. But he's like, yes. He's like, I'm curious, like, what are our kids' names going to be? And then I was like, first of all, I'm not going to share like my list of kids' names because like I have built that like since high school and I'm not going to have a heifer take one of my names. So I just threw the question back to him and I was like, oh, like, what are your names? And he was like, oh, like, he's like, I dated like a French guy for like 2 years. So I have a lot of like French names and like European names. And he's like, one of the names is like Olive. And I was like, okay, like that's cute. And then he's like, what about you? And I think I gave like a basic name. I think I said like Matthew or something. Like it was just so basic. And he was like, oh, that's cute. And I was like, yeah. But I just thought that was so funny because at the end of the social, we were like mingling, and these two guys were kind of talking about like, everyone there. And these two guys were like, oh my God, like, did you guys get that guy that asked about the baby names? And we started fucking laughing because apparently he gave everyone different fucking names. So we were like, this guy was literally just fucking lying out his ass. Like, oh, like, he's all like, because I was like, oh, did he say Olive? And he was like, no, he said like some other fucking name. And then this other guy was like, he told me like some basic George name. So that was like genuinely funny because it made us realize how we could like have lied to people that we were like genuinely not vibing with. And we missed out on the opportunity to be like, this restaurant you're sitting at, I actually fucking own it. But yeah, guy number 3 that stood out to me that I can like remember, he was the guy that I actually walked in with like at the same time. The cutie that I mentioned that I was like mingling with at the beginning. He's a hairstylist. We're going to call him, we'll just call him the hairstylist. So he's a hairstylist. We chatted at the beginning. He was like genuinely cute. He told me we actually, in those 4 minutes, like we talked about a lot. He told me he was a twin. His twin's a firefighter, which amazing. He was very attractive, totally my type. Complimented my dimples. A few people actually did. He told me, because I was like, oh, so like, how's this going for you? Like, how are your matches going? And he's like, it's okay. He's like, I love like, the energy and like the whole like, communication and all that with like in real life. He's like, but genuinely, like, he's like, it's like whatever. He's like, I haven't like said yes to like, anyone but like one other person. And then I was like, okay. And then we chatted for like a little bit, and then he was like smiling at me. He's all like, you're gonna be my second yes. And I was like, in the bag, bitches. So hopefully that was a match. I mean, he told me I was gonna be his second yes, but I don't know if he was lying. I put yes for him. We talked a little bit about like his family and like that dynamic, and I don't want to like air him out, but like, yeah, I'm not going to air him out because what if he did match with me? But yeah, like it was like really nice, really attractive. And then we had like a break after that round, like after our 4 minutes were up. So, like, we're just chatting and we're just hanging out like during the break, and it was like a vibe. So I said yes to him. Guy number 4 that stood out to me was this diva, y'all. This diva was like, diva in a good way, by the way. Like, don't get it twisted. A diva in a good way. This guy was just like full of energy, and he was like ready to be there. And I don't know how the fuck he got into this because he does not have a job. Someone needs to like check their LinkedIn. He does not have a job. He was like, I used to work for Disney. And I was like, oh, used to? And I was like, so where do you work now? And he's like, oh, I don't work. And I was like, okay. And he's like, yeah, like I used to do, I think, PR for Disney or something like that. And then, very valid. He was like, oh, like it was very much like a culture of like, if someone leaves, they just like delegate the work. They don't really hire someone or like, figure something out. So he was just overworked, quit the job, went to go spend a month in Europe and vacation in Europe, just came back from Europe, and has just been living life, quote, catching up with friends, lots of dinners, lots of laughter. And I was like, okay, girl, kudos to you. But yeah, I was genuinely like, how did you get into this? Like, either his LinkedIn still has his Disney job or something, or he knows I don't know. But I was just sitting there and I was like, my love, you don't have a job. And he's like, I've been like slowly applying to jobs, and like, he's like, yeah, like I'll get into it. He's like, I have some savings that I'm just using. And he's like, I'm probably just going to end up back at Disney. And I was like, okay. I mean, vacation time would have been cute, but I guess quitting is something interesting. Anyways, there was another guy who was also a diva, like work it, mama, like totally not compatible, if you know what I mean. But like, he was like this, like, fashion guru. Like he had this like coat on, had these earrings, had like, I think he had like bleached hair, like slicked back, like, the little oomph in the hair. Mama was working it. jewelry, accessories, like outfit was a vibe. Um, but this man had like 4 million jobs. I'm not gonna lie. Like he needs to give one of his jobs to the previous guy that I just spoke about because I asked him, I was like, oh, so like what do you do like for work? And I forgot what he told me. He like his actual job, he was like, oh, well, like my actual job. He's like, I have a lot of jobs. That's what he said first. He's like, I have a lot of jobs. He's like, but my actual job, something on like, I forgot what it was, but I think something about like mentorship or like mental health, something like that. And he's like, yeah, like I actually just spoke at Cal State Fullerton today. And like, I talked to them about like this, and that. And I drove over here from there. And like, he's like, yeah, but I have a lot of other jobs. He's like, you know, I also like style and like I model and I do like social media content. And he was just like throwing all this shit out. Like I genuinely don't remember, but he just kept throwing shit out. And he was like, yeah, like I have a lot of jobs. And I was like, okay, thank you. Ding, ding, ding. And yeah, I was like, okay, whatever. The last guy that I can remember, because I was having like brain fog, like, have we gotten our results yet? Not yet. The last guy was Cutie. He was genuinely like my number one, and I hope we get to match. We're gonna call him Mr. J because he's a teacher. Funny enough, when I moved over to his table, he was scarfing down like the hamburger because our tickets came with a meal. It came with a hamburger from Mr. T's, the restaurant that was hosting. He was like fucking scarfing that hamburger down before I got there. And I got there and he's like, and then I was like, hi. So Mr. J is a teacher. And funny enough, I feel like we vibed, and I really hope that it's not just like me thinking I'm Delulu as fuck, but he's actually from like a neighboring city in like the area that I live in. So he was like, oh, like, where are you coming from? And I was like, oh, like, I'm coming from like so-and-so. And he's like, shut up, no way. He's like, what are you doing all the way out here? And I was like, oh, well, yeah, you know, I saw the event and I wanted to give it a shot. So I came. And then I was like, where are you from? And he's like, oh, like, I'm from so-and-so. And then I was like, that's like right next door. And he's like, yeah. He's like, that's why I was like, what are you doing over here? So he actually like, he's like, oh, my friend is like great friends with the, the coordinator of the event. And she was like pushing me to try it. And she's like, oh, like my friend's like doing this like social, like, you know, for like gay people, speed dating, like you should do it. And he's like, I decided to give it a try. So first of all, like he's really handsome. I'm just going to say that. Like, out of everyone in that room, he was probably like the only person that meets like my type, if you were to say it that way. Like, he's very handsome, like meets like all those like characteristics that I'm like into. The only person. And, you know, I think him also being from this area was like really great. Because we just started talking about, he's like, oh, where'd you grow up? And then I was like, oh, I grew up in like this town. And he was like, oh, no way. He's like, I grew up like in this town right next door. And I was like, oh, my parents live there. And he's like, my parents live there too. And we're just like talking. And then he's like, where do your parents live? And I was like, oh, like these are the cross streets. And he's like, shut up. Those are the same cross streets like for my parents. So like we just kept like talking. And he was like, what high school did you go to? And then we started talking about work, and he's like, so where do you work? And I told him like, oh, you know, like I do communications, like la, 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 like I work here. And he's like, shut up. Like I work like in the same like, you know, area. And I was like, shut up. So we just had a lot in common. So I really thought that was like a green flag. And then also like, he was very charming. He was very nice. Funny because like when I sat down, he was eating his burger and he's like, oh my God, like, he's like, I'm trying to like use the in-between time to like scarf down my burger. He's like, I'm so hungry. He's like, and honestly, cause like the burger was kind of like, what do they call it when that shit's like so pink on the inside? Whatever, rare or undone. No, well, whatever that shit's called. It was like a little pink on the inside, right? Like I guess how like actual meat's supposed to be eaten. But he's like, I'm Mexican. He's like, we don't eat our shit like this. He's like, we like eat it like fully cooked. He's like, but I'm like eating it because I'm like really hungry. So I thought that was funny. And yeah, and we were just like talking about work and everything. And I was like, he's a teacher. So I was like, okay, like, I love education. I was in education for a while. And then, he knows a little bit about what I do. So then he was like, kind of like surprised by that. So I just thought that was like really interesting. He also mentioned that like his family has like a tequila brand because he's like half from Jalisco, half of him. No, that doesn't make sense. Half of him. Um, he's from Jalisco. So like one of his parents is from Jalisco. So that's like where tequila's made, of course. So he was like, oh yeah, like my family, we actually have a tequila brand. He's like, and we just brought it into the States and like we just like circulated into distribution and you'll find it like locally where we live, like around the area. He told me like the name of the tequila and everything. So like honestly, I felt like he's the only person that I had like this long ass conversation with in those 4 minutes because everyone else, like, I felt like I was dragging, like we were clearly weren't into each other. So we're just kind of like, how's your day? Like, how was work? Like, what, like whatever. And then with him, I feel like it was just kind of like, I got so much information that I felt like more than 4 minutes passed. And honestly, like even throughout the event, like I would catch him kind of like glancing over at me. And, I would catch him because I was glancing over at him too. And even at the end, like once we finished like, our rotations, it was just kind of like a mingling, like networking hour. So I was like standing with like this group of guys that was just kind of like, they were like funny and talking about the event. And like I would catch him just like looking over at me. And so I'm really probably he's like the only person that I genuinely like would want to connect with from the event. The event happened in West Hollywood, so I feel like there was a lot of people that are from that area, which is fine. That's like okay, but like I just didn't connect to a lot of people. Like there was just people who like, I don't know if it was like some people like I just felt like culturally we didn't connect. With some people I felt like we didn't connect like on a career level. Like there was a lot of like entertainment industry folks out there, of course, because it's like LA and WeHo's like very like LA, so like it was a lot of that crowd, and I didn't really feel connected too much to a lot of people. And like with this guy, I did feel connected. So hopefully that match comes through. I'm still looking at my phone to see if we get to reveal these matches like on camera with you guys, but we'll see. But yeah, at the end, I ended up having such a good time, and I stayed like almost the whole hour after with these guys that there was like two guys, they had just finished their speed dating. This was like the last round and we finished and then the event organizer was like, okay, like that's it. But we hadn't like gone with each other. So he like turned over and one of them introduced himself and he was like, hey, like, I don't think like we got a chance to like sit with each other. He's like, oh, my name's Drew. And then the other guy like introduced himself and he was like, yeah, I don't think I actually like got a chance with you either. He's like, there's a few people that like we didn't like, I think we needed one more round to like fully get through everyone. So we were just talking and like, one of the guys was like so fucking funny. Like he was so funny. And he was just like, we were cracking up like about everything. He's the one that was like, I think that fucking guy was just like throwing out random names. Like he told all of us like random names for his like these kids that he wants. It was like such a good time. And then this other guy, the other guy that was there, he was telling us how he like collect hobbies. So he's like, oh yeah, like I learned how to juggle. And he's like, I know how to juggle. And then we're like, okay, like what's another hobby? And then he's like, I bought a fucking a pin cycle or a pinwheel cycle, like the little bikes that have like one wheel. And then the other guy was like, dude, you're just a fucking clown. Like, just say it. It was like the funniest thing ever. And honestly, like more people started joining our conversation. And like by the end of the night, like it was just a group of us that were just like vibing and kind of like talking about everything. We were talking about like, some of them are from the East Coast. Some of them are from like Texas. So like we were talking about everything. One of the funniest things was like one of the guys was like, oh yeah, like I'm from, I forgot what part of Texas, but he's like, I'm from the part where like they'll smile and talk shit to you. And then he's like, they'll tell you, they'll be like, oh, bless your heart, you so stupid. Like it was like the funniest thing ever. But anyways, like moving on from that. Takeaways from the event, I will say like, I really like shout out to like the team that put this together, they were like amazing individuals, and like their energy was just there. Sika, who was like the main organizer, she was just like a light of joy. And she had like someone taking pictures, which I told her, I was like, girl, you better only post this if I look cute. I was like, because if not, and she's like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, if you don't look cute, we won't post it. So like, it was just such a vibe, and like they did such a good job. I feel like 4 minutes is and isn't enough time, but I feel like that's part of the purpose of the event. And what I mean by that is like there was some people that like we started chatting, and like I felt like we had just started chatting, and then like time was up. So I'm like, well, that's kind of a good thing, because that means that like we vibe, check yes, and then like you carry us on. Like that's the whole point of the event. But I feel like a lot of the times, so the people that were moving, like they had to move with their fucking hamburger. Like, I'm not gonna lie. And I did tell Sika this. I was like, okay, girl, like the hamburger, like moving with your whole fucking plate of hamburger, like that's kind of crazy. And she's like, yes, like I know, like we're ironing things out. And I told her like lightheartedly, like I'm all for like growing pains. I've done events before, but yeah, so like I feel like you're trying to like move around to the next table with your fucking plate, and like if the time already started, like there was just a lot of moving pieces. So I feel like for some of the people, like I wasn't able to have enough time to like start the conversation, and when we had just started, the time was up. And then I say it is enough time because there was some conversations where I was like, we're clearly not like into this. Like these are the longest 4 minutes of my life. So I guess it's like the pros and cons of the event. Like if you're into someone, of course it's gonna go by fast, which is the whole point of you like realizing there's a connection there. Check yes so that you could be connected after. But I also realized how much energy goes into like real human connection. And I feel like it was exhausting. My voice was kind of like dry, and my voice was like scratchy because I kept talking, and people, you have to talk a little loud because it's like everyone's talking. But it just made me realize like how much energy and effort goes into human connection. But it also made me appreciate like how good it felt, because it just felt so different, of course, than like swiping on the dating apps. And I was like, this is what it's all about, like human connection. And like, there's people that clearly like both of them weren't vibing like on a romantic level, but we still had a conversation and talked about our days, and like talked about like the event, and like we would be like, okay, they're clearly hitting it off over there. Like it was just like fun to like have genuine connections and like be in this space together. I do feel like I left the event feeling a little lighter, just because of the sense of kind of like having like some sort of like hope of like, okay, like there's still hope for like genuine connections and real connections out there and meeting people organically, but also like being like, okay, like this is what real like connections should feel like, and kind of like remembering like what dating looked like and what it should look like and what it should be for me. So I did leave like a little happy from the event, just because I mean I only genuinely was interested in two people out of like everyone that was there, and we still don't even know if I'm into them. I mean if we're matched, but I felt like a little encouraged leaving the event, if that makes sense, because I was like, okay, like chivalry is not fully dead. Like we can still like have in-person spaces to like meet with people face to face, and I really thought that was sweet. I also realized how fast we are to judge people based on like their looks, their voice. And I feel like when I got into the room, I will call myself out. I was a little guilty at like starting to read people and just kind of being like, oh, I'm not going to be into that guy. Like totally not into that. Like, he's like way too this or way too that. Like, and I feel like we get so carried away with kind of like doing that. So, I think once we actually got to sit down and speak with people, we found out how we can actually vibe with people. I clearly remember like one of the guys that I first like saw, I was like, oh, like totally we're not going to be compatible. Like we're like both like very feminine. once I sat down with him, like he's such a cool guy. And like I noted him down for friends because like he's like a lawyer and like, we were just like talking about like a lot of like awesome stuff. Like we were talking about like work and he was talking about how he's like, even though he's a lawyer and it pays the bills and like it's paying his student debt, like he's going back to school to become a like a therapist because that's what he's like, that's his calling and that's what he's connected to. So like I guess the moral of the story is like we're so quick to judge people because I was like judging people based off how they looked or like their mannerisms, like whatever. But once I got to sit down and like have a conversation with people, I'm like, you're actually really cool. And I'm not into you romantically, but that doesn't mean that I can't like, build a friendship with you. So I think that like also affects connections. I think a lot of the times, did we get an email? No, not yet. I feel like a lot of times we just kind of like judge people and we let that kind of like lead instead of like letting people's like personas and like who they are and their vibe and their energy lead. So I think oftentimes like we just have to like step away from like digital like avenues and like really just walk away from like the algorithm of swiping and like this culture of like really just like horrible like fake connections. Because I talked about this in that dating episode, go watch that, but like we get so lost in it, and I think we need to push more towards the past in the sense of like building third spaces where we can meet people organically, not only in a romantic sense but in a friendship sense. And I think we always think that the right person's one swipe away, but what we don't realize is that the right person could be sitting across from us, next to us, or can just be like randomly walking alongside us, like at a cafe. And I think that's the beauty of like real connections, is that like, we genuinely think like, oh, I'm gonna find my person on an app, like they're one swipe away, but they could literally be in the same room. So like I'm going to work on building the courage to kind of like meet people more organically. And I want to push you guys to do that as well. I think overall, would I do it again? I think I would. A lot of people were kind of like asking each other if it was like the first time doing speed dating, and it was my first time doing speed dating. So I'm glad I was able to share with you guys. But some people did share that they've gone to other speed dating events and that they were like, horrible or like a hot mess. So I'm glad that my first experience was like a really good, curated speed dating event and a professionals geared event. So I had fun. I think I would do it again. And I think I wouldn't care if I just get friends out of it or if I get like, actual like connections out of it. I genuinely think like it kind of just filled my cup to have that like, sense of like human face-to-face connection. And I think that's one of the reasons why I would do it again. And I don't know, maybe you can meet someone. I encourage you guys to do it. Like look for it, download Eventbrite and like look for like, speed dating events that are near you. Whether you're gay, you're straight, bisexual, like all of those categories are available out there. You really just have to look for them. I did Odo Social, so ODO Social. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Follow them on Instagram. They were a really great team, and they said they're going to come out with more. So if you're interested, show up to one of those. Maybe we can meet each other at one if I return to one of theirs in the future. But yeah, I think if you're tired of like the, hey, what are you doing text messages, or like the, what's your favorite color? Like if you're tired of all of that, like try one of these out. You might even just walk away with like having been fulfilled, having genuine like real-time connections. But until then, I feel like, just stay hopeful. And, I'm just going to like tell my therapist to listen to this video instead of having me explain it all over again. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, we're all just looking for someone to look up from their phone and really just see us for who we are and, build connections and take the time to get to know us on a deeper level. So yeah, that was my experience with speed dating. I hope you guys had fun. I hope you enjoyed my crazy, fun, awkward stories. Yeah, it was great. I know we're going to work on some amazing experiences on our end here at Mijo Podcast, so stay tuned for that. If you don't follow us on social media, please do so at Mijo Podcast on Instagram or at The Mijo Podcast on TikTok. Share our podcast with your friends. I really, really want to build community, and I want to take that community to an in real life setting very soon. So stay tuned for that. Until next time, go out and make strong connections. Bye, guys.